welcome to London Live Debates. I'm Anthony Baxter. As day 2 of London Technology Week gets underway, today we're asking, is the digital world making our lives better or worse? Some studies suggest the advance in tech is making us lazier, less active and less intelligent. Others highlight the benefits of a more connected planet. We're here to discuss the issues. I'm joined by Pete Traynor, the founder and director of Nexus, a company with interests in the psychological and behavioural impact of digital design. Sophie Deen is the founder of Bright Little Labs, an edutech firm which creates products to help children understand global issues. And Jennifer Arcuri is the founder of the InnoTech Summit, a technology event which brings together entrepreneurs, investors and policymakers. Thank you for joining us this morning. Get in touch with the debate at home as well. Have your say on this issue. Do you think technology improves or ruins lives? We're at London Live on Twitter, or you can email us hello@londonlive.co.uk. Put your questions and thoughts to the panel. Right, let's just start then with probably a broad sweep of this subject. Pete, do you think technology improves lives? Does it make lives worse for us? Is it a bit of both?
I think it's definitely a bit of both. I think the last 10 years has certainly been a frontier on this topic. London's a hotbed for the way technology is augmenting and changing people's lives. The thing that I fear the most is the divide. So the divide between people that are technically enabled and the people that are not technically enabled. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that we have in terms of the way technology is affecting lives in this country. And actually it's going in rapid speed in both directions. I see more people getting disconnected, as many people that are getting more connected. And so this gulf, I think, is something that needs to be addressed.
Fine, okay. Sophie, would you agree? Is there a divide? Is there a gulf? And is it getting worse?
Yes, I definitely agree with that, but I would think about it more as a global divide. So as we think of the internet as this place where all information exists, but actually only 40% of people are online at all, so there's a huge divide, and the people that are online, again, some of them have access to it, can create technology, and some people just use it passively. And so I am really concerned about technical or digital representing the existing sort of patriarchy.
Okay, Jennifer, there's obviously vast improvements in the way we live our lives because of technology. Do you see any negatives to it as well?
I mean, yeah, of course, there's always the fear of, a political divide. But I wanted to add to this first question that, I've been here the past 4 years and I've seen what we've done in London, like building a tech ecosystem from scratch. I mean, sure, there was tech here and there was always creative things going on, particularly in East London, but the exciting thing about what we've done here is creating this ecosystem that other pockets of clusters, not only in the rest of the country, but around the world, giving kids, like in countries like South Africa, where 50% of their population is under 30, giving them access to collaborative school tools with technology is amazing. It powers them, and especially the work I've done, in the Middle East, across the Middle East, the pockets of clusters that have looked to London to do what we've done. And I think that's the most exciting part about it. Yes, for sure there's a divide, and yes, robots are taking over, and AI is going to eventually be the next big problem that we have to deal with. And that's something that absolutely concerns me because it's still such a scary stigma. But for the most part, right now, we are living in one of the most exciting times. This is the best time to build a business because all the tools that you could possibly ever need are right there for you. You just got to go do it yourself. I think one thing that people get placated on is that they think that, oh, this is just going to come naturally. Oh, I don't know tech, then, I should just stick to what I know. Actually, that's the thing about tech. It challenges you to constantly think, what's coming and to brush up your skills. You can't just get lazy. If anything, it forces us and our brains to constantly think, which is ultimately what I love the most.
Pete, you obviously have thought about the way technology is impacting our brains to some extent as well. Do you agree that it challenges us and it doesn't make us lazy, or does it make us kind of just go, well, actually, this device will do this for me, so I don't need to think?
Yeah, well, so we've been doing a lot of studies in the last year on the biological impact of digital, especially on the youth as well. And actually, I agree totally with everything you said. It's an amazing, amazing thing that technology is doing. But the other thing, it's we call it kind of Prometheus New Age, where we give bedroom entrepreneurs the fire to go off and make apps and stuff. And there's really nothing regulating them, which is great because that's where innovation and creativity comes from. But what we're seeing is a huge amount of services out there that are making lives much easier, but because of some of the neuro kind of plasticical things that go on inside you, we might be making people stupider by making things more frictionless, by making things more linear, more A-B, up-down. And so I think there's definitely something that we need to start doing in the next few years where we're looking at the biological impact of digital on the brain, on the body. There are a lot of hormonal releases during digital experiences when people have like good times and bad times. And just looking at some of that and saying, what is that doing and what are the opportunities to leverage that, but also what are the opportunities to kind of regulate or monitor it rather than regulate? Because it's definitely not a regulated space.
May I add on to that? Like, for example, stuff with, like, I don't think there, maybe you can answer this, but you know, early, like our little guys, right? Like I love when I hear kids that, you know, 2 years old, you know, can like hack in and change their parents' passwords. That's awesome.
Oh, my 2-year-old daughter is doing that.
Yeah,
like
but then I also question, and I love kids like this,
Yeah.
right? And they make me excited, but I also worry about the effects of like radiology, you know, or the radiation to their brains, you know, developing minds.
Yeah.
And what does it mean if they're actually, if everything is like, making their brain very stimulated? Is that good enough? Are we then compromising something else? And because we are the generation of tech, you know,
Yeah.
we don't really have enough research to know what the effects of like constantly being around a Wi-Fi signal, for example, like that blue light in our bedrooms, turn it off or put it not by your bed, you know, or is it okay for us to constantly be looking at LCD screens? I mean, that's the part that makes me think, you know, biologically speaking, are we evolving into some kind of like brain mush, I mean, while we are being exposed?
Well, here's the kicker. We're not going to know for probably another 10 years.
Yeah. Then we find
what
out
we
we
started 10 years ago, which again I find really exciting, but at the same time we're experimenting with a lot of people using technology at the moment, like en masse. You know, what is it, 60 billion downloads from app stores in the last 10 years. It's crazy.
Our generation has no idea, or any generation, what it's like to be a native, to be born into this world. And so talking about stuff that's not been tested, like I really don't think we have any clue what's happening to children, very young children that are being brought up in this world. And like some of this stuff, reducing everything to sound bites so that we can get information quicker is good in one way. But when you think about how children start thinking about information and whether they're able to sort of critically assess it or have time to really consider stuff, or even the child that you just spoke about that can hack, I would say, cool, that child is cool because they are curious about their environment, they're pushing against their boundaries, and technology just happens to be the thing that they're pushing against. But if technology wasn't there, that same child would probably be questioning why they have to eat their vegetables, or, you know, something else, or doing something else very creative. So I think when you think about children, it's very important to remember that technology is a tool for them, but we have to be teaching them how to think critically and how to be curious about the physical world that they live into.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a comment about it? So 2 years ago, the Chancellor announced that we were mandating coding in the classroom, right? And no one, you know, banged that drum louder than I did, both here, Middle East, you know, South Africa, South America, and then back at home in the US. But now that it's, you know, moving forward and legislation is taking flight, like your daughter will be learning to code at 5 and writing code by 8. And then now I'm making the case to government with my events and videos that what are we going to do when these kids exploit code, right? We'd be silly to think that they're not going to turn it upside down, break it apart. You know, and if you see the way children, I mean, the idea of breaking something apart is not new. We've been doing this, you know, this is how we evolve forward. But, you know, are we then creating a generation of spy masters, you know, like the kids that like want to detonate, you know, take out the motion sensors in a room or know how to log in and like break down the master pass? I mean, I don't say that that's, you know, good or bad. It's just something that is inevitable. So we have to learn how to curb that, you know, and channel it into good. Otherwise, technology can take over.
Do you think at this stage where the government isn't really aware of the skills that they're giving young people?
Well, it's a little naive, like, and I work firsthand with them, and I've taught myself to hack this year, you know, and I now work with hackers because they inspired me to learn how to, you know, see things from a different perspective, or not just take face value of something, to actually, you know, and I love, you know, that I'm still learning, you know, as I approach my 30s and, you know, going into the next stage of my life. And so when I go back to run my discussions, we did this cybersecurity launch with Tech London Advocates yesterday. My focus of that panel was the cyber resiliency. And yes, innovation's important, but we have to look at our skills and what are we teaching kids? Are we just throwing them, here's all the skills in the world, go at it, you know, and then we expect them not to break into a bank or do something. I mean, now that they can, you guys see the way they play PS4, right? The way they play World of Warcraft or get extra lives or gain artillery, you know, to jump to the next level is very similar to hacking, yeah? And I see the similarities between the two that I'm like, I question whether or not we're doing all that we can right now to kind of harness those skills and create, you know, better pathways.
I have to agree with that. Sorry. It's just, I worked at Code Club and we were teaching children how to code, 9 to 11-year-olds, and then when the curriculum came in, I helped to train up teachers, and we're in about 70 countries across the world. And so what you're saying, I guess, is that, you know, like, children need to learn this because it's a skill. It's like writing, I think. You know, it's very important. You need it to access the world. But we need to, at the same time, teach them like how to be using it and teach them to build their human character and human values, because they are learning things, but just like they should be learning in school, skills so that they can create and do what they like in the world. And that has to be sort of balanced out with teaching them values and who they are and what they believe in, so that they can apply it properly.
I have this.
Take a short break, I'm afraid, but keep those thoughts. We'll pick up where we leave off here. Stay with us. Plenty more to come on today's debates. It's a heated one already. Remember, you can have your say as well on Twitter @London Live. What do you think about technology? Hello again, welcome back to London Live Debates with me, Anthony Baxter. Today we're asking, does technology make our lives better or worse? Just before the break, we were talking a little bit about hacking and how young people are being given the skills, certainly when it comes to coding. Pete, we cut you off, I'm afraid. What were you going to say?
I was about to say, I think there's a lot of positives from hacking. Hacking has a very negative connotation. Even the term is kind of associated to, you know, 90s movies of hacking into banks and stuff. And I think the actual, the innovation of hacking that's happened in the last 10 years, I think can be really positive as well. I'm actually really looking forward to my kids hacking my world when I'm old and infirm to make it better for me, to you know, create their own apps and services that make my life easier, kind of one-on-one rather than one-to-many. And so I think this idea of teaching our children the philosophy of hacking and the ethos and the tools to hack is really positive. And you know, with everything, there's always going to be a positive and a negative. And you know, I look at graffiti as art now rather than, you know, defacing buildings. But 10 years ago, it was this evil thing that was ruining our city. And so I think it's just another kind of social norm now, hacking. And actually, the positives of hacking, I think, should be encouraged in a lot of ways. Okay,
let's just stay with the positives then when it comes to technology. And for a minute, let's just focus on London's tech sector. It is London Technology Week, so we should be celebrating it. And there's a lot to celebrate, isn't there?
Yeah. There is, absolutely.
Pete, let's come to you then, Jennifer. In terms of, I know that you feel quite passionate about what's been achieved here. And from someone who's come to the UK from America, where we look at their tech sector as something quite special, what would you say?
I laughed when I came and everyone's like, oh, California. And I'm like, really? Because look at what we can do here. Now, I love California. And when I first got here, I joked that you had a higher probability of being struck by lightning than to get a visa to stay here. But I, you know, went to school and I built my business during school and then, you know, got a visa to stay as our lovely government started recognizing entrepreneurs and serious tech skills, which was awesome. So, you know, you want something bad enough, you can build it. I mean, that's the American dream, but I'm doing it here in London. And the exciting thing about the UK and London is they're, for such a country that is steeped in tradition and with such a reverence of, you know, tradition, they love being innovative and forward thinking. I mean, 2012 was an extremely transitional year for our city here. And what was really great is we brought all the big tech companies over from the West Coast. We brought them here and we said, right, now we're going to build these clusters. Things like Tech London Advocates, you know, the InnoTech Network came out, but this, and various other London and Partners, lots of great initiatives. But building this network of people, you know, and clustering them throughout the country regionally, you know, starting in London that kind of focused out to the rest. It just empowers us to keep going, right? And it gives us such a great, you know, sense of pride to feel like, or at least I do, because I got to be a part of, you know, it with you guys. I get to continue to build something. Whereas you go to California, you're one of many, right? You're one of, you know, everybody's raising the same. There's tons of girls that look just like me. There's lots of, you know, the same. And that's fine. California's got its own love. There's no competition. There's just an extension of great happening here.
Here you get a real sense of community, I think. So I love stuff like hackathons where people will come together and just try and look at a problem differently, and people are really willing to give up their time to do that. You've got meetups going on all over the place. As like a young business, it's very easy to meet people in technology who are willing to talk to you, help you, innovate. It doesn't really matter where you've come from. It's all about sort of where you're going and what you can bring to the table now. And with hackathons, so one of the things that I really care about is sort of these big global issues that technology can help us feel disconnected to and desensitized from. So if you think about something like water or clothes, we waste 30% of our clothes, we waste 50% of our food, and that can feed all of the people in the world that are starving. And so there's this inefficient system going on that I really believe that young people, young technologists can come together and solve if they use technology for good. And that's something that's so amazing. It can be so transformative and so empowering.
So it's fair to say that certainly for Londoners, for many Londoners, technology is a force for good in terms of it's creating opportunities, it's also creating jobs, and it's pumping a huge amount of money into the economy.
Yes.
It also says we don't have to be okay settling for less than the best. And we don't have to take something given at face value. We actually have the ability to make it better. I always say that we're the generation who's tired of inheriting crap. Right? We actually get to go back and say, you know what, that didn't work for a reason. Now try this, Or we do these hackathons to build onto something. Last year or 2 years ago, when we had the big flood, we had a big hackathon at Google campus, and this was awesome. This was like, open this data. Let's look at precipitation levels. Let's look at what we can build to help, you know, make sure this doesn't happen again. Or, you know, the water situation. You know, I love being able to. I'm part of a group called ICE, and we go around kind of traveling to different pockets of entrepreneurial, you know, hubs around the world, preaching the London message, showing, you know, by example. We went and spent 2 weeks in South Africa going around to the Branson Center, you know, and it was awesome to kind of share our expertise and empower these kids. And they just thought it was amazing that we would come and spend, you know, we collectively put our money together to invest in one of the companies in South Africa, and it made this kid's day. He could hire, you know, 9 more people. He was like doing a shoe cleaning company, and I just thought this was awesome that Londoners cared enough about, you know, continuing paying it forward, because that's what it's about. That's what tech empowers us to do.
I think London also has this very paternalistic way of saying to young people, it's all right to go and start your own company. You don't have to go and work for one of those big companies anymore.
It's okay.
You can work with the big companies, but just do it on your own terms. I work with more companies now that are 4, 5 to 10 people than giant companies where you're just swimming around as another number in the pool of people. And I think that's a really positive thing that's happened in the last 10 years, because we're saying the sum of all the little parts are as powerful as these big conglomerates that were in charge in the industry before kind of 10 years ago.
And we're learning to share. Like, I think that technology is really a pioneering example of how sharing is much better. We can all, like open data, the UK actually is brilliant. The government website for open data is great. You can access a lot of stuff. But also in London, you know, it's not about being private and not telling anyone anything. Share, open source your stuff, and let's all build on each other's knowledge so that we can all share in cool innovation and cool technology, which is great. Like, I really like that.
And nobody's eating each other's lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all just trying to solve the same problem.
There's plenty to go around, too.
It's great.
And that might be why we as a nation haven't had any serious, real threats to, like, being hacked. Because we're just open. We don't have to keep the same kind of gridlock that I argue with my country, does. That's a whole other topic about encryption, though. One thing I do love sharing, that 4 years ago, when I started business school, I mean, I came from a film background, so I had, film distribution and was making films at California. And when I came to business school, like day 2, I was like, oh God, I am not going to be a financial analyst. I'll never be a consultant. What am I doing here? What am I doing in London? It was a very kind of like freak out moment. And then when I saw what was going on with tech, just very early days, remember this is the end of 2011 when we were just kind of starting, and I thought, well, maybe I don't have to work for somebody else. Maybe, just maybe, I can build my own company. At the time, my school got very territorial, around that until I could prove to them that I wasn't going to let this go. And then they supported me, and we did our first InnoTech. That was awesome. But a lot of the kids that went through that program were very like, the only way to get, succeed would be to get that big C-suite job when you graduated, to get, work at the Big Four. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but what's hilarious is now they're like, Jen, how do you do the business thing? Because I'm really tired of corporate culture. And what if I wanted to start my own thing? What would be the first? And I love that because I'm like, right now you're getting excited and feeling, that you can do it yourself. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just on a practical level, sometimes it can be quite difficult for people to kind of equate how technology can actually improve their lives on a day-to-day basis. But there must be lots of startups in London who are creating products that are really changing lives. Yeah. Have you got any examples?
Yeah, I mean, so my company, as an example, we're looking at mental health and sort of low-grade depression as something that technology can help with. Like, we collect so much data on our phones. There's got to be ways, and we're finding ways now of using that data to track normal and monitor you, with your permission, to make sure that when you're not all right, when you're not normal, there's an alert, there's a warning system, there's somebody there to help you. And so there's a great example. I think, the Big Four, the banks, NatWest are producing heaps of tools for savings to help people from a well-being point of view. It's not even about money anymore, it's about well-being. This is about people's mental health. This is about their kind of lives. And so there's another great example of technology that didn't even exist 10 years ago, helping people know themselves better. And I think actually data is really the fuel that's made the well-being movement more prevalent. It's kind of, it's the fuel that's driving all of the innovations.
I love that you do that, honestly, because mental health is something we never talk about as a society.
But we weren't able to do it, more than a few years ago.
Yeah,
so we're on the cusp now of having this power to do good stuff,
I love
which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
We are halfway already. We are going to have to take another break. When we come back, we'll look at some of the negatives, because there are lots of reports which suggest technology is perhaps making us lazier, less active, perhaps even more unintelligent. So stay with us, and remember, keep your thoughts coming as well. At London Live on Twitter. We'll be back in about 4 minutes' time. Hello there, welcome back to London Live Debates. Today we're asking, is the digital world making our lives better or worse? Here to discuss the issues, I'm joined by Pete Traynor, the founder and director of Nexus, a company with interest in the psychological and behavioural impact of digital design. Sophie Deen is the founder of Bright Little Labs, an edu-tech firm which creates products to help children understand global issues. And Jennifer Arcuri is the founder of the InnoTech Summit, which brings together policymakers and businesses for the benefits of the tech economy. We've gone through a huge amount already, but in this section, let's just focus perhaps on some of the things which concern us. Sophie, if we start with you, I know at the start we mentioned this divide, this gap, and the way in which actually technology could be used to help people around the world, but perhaps it's not being used as well as it could be.
Yes, I feel really passionately about this because I think that technology reflects people, and so as a whole world, we've got so many problems to do with the climate changing, to do with gosh, I've forgotten all of the problems. To do with poverty, to do with people not getting educated. We've got over 1 billion slaves, million slaves at the moment, like actual slaves, and we look at sort of history and we say, oh, the slave trade was terrible, but how all of our physical things are produced, generally speaking, there's been a lot of oppression in the supply chain. People are not being treated fairly, people don't have access to education or any sort of quality of life, and we're really like digital, and we're losing the connection to the things around us. So children, 40% of children think that milk comes from Tesco's, not from cows. And so I think that technology can help us to educate people, to look at the real problems that humanity is facing, and it can also help us disconnect from those problems. So all of the sound bites and all of the information that we get all of the time almost makes us think like, that's over there, and it's, you know, I'm just reading the news and it doesn't really affect me. And I don't think it's helping us empathise, because we're just completely disconnected to it, and it could solve all of these problems, and so that's what I'm trying to do.
So has the tech sector yet to find its kind of social corporate responsibility in a way?
Yes, exactly. I really think that. Teenagers are exposed to 7.5 hours of screen time every day. And they're consuming stuff differently. They're consuming a lot of videos. They find their own videos that they want to watch, which is cool. But we should be creating content for them that educates them about the world that they live in. They should understand what technology is, because if they don't understand it, they can't assess how it's directing their lives. You know, technology actually directs what we do, and you'll probably look into this and how it affects our behaviour, and it sort of harnesses our addictive qualities, and it does guide us, and we need to be aware of that, or we're just subject to it.
Peter, as a parent, what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, so for me, there's two things. There's the kind of the 7 hours sedentary sitting down time, you know, the link to obesity, etc., which I actually think is getting better, because a lot of mobile was all about being up on your feet and moving around and exploring the world. So I think we're just on the cusp of fixing some of the stationary Xbox drone type kids, and we're getting people out and about with technology, which is great. There's a psychological impact that worries me more, which is like attention. So 60s, there was a behavioural psychologist, Walter Mischel, who conducted something called the Stanford Marshmallow Test. Stanford Marshmallow Test was basically an experiment where they put 5-year-olds in a room with a marshmallow on the middle of the table, and he said, you've got to sit there and you've got to look at the marshmallow for 15 minutes. And if you don't eat it, we'll give you another one. Now, 15 years later, they tested those kids, and the ones that delayed gratification during that experiment had higher IQs, higher SAT scores, performed better professionally speaking. And actually, we're creating a new version of the Stanford Marshmallow Test with phones that push and pull you in, attention that's broken like every kind of 10 seconds, because you're constantly digging into your pocket to pull out your phone. And like, so there's a real issue in my head that we're not monitoring, or we're not delaying instant gratification. So we're creating a kind of global version of the Stanford Marshmallow Test with our kids and our adults. And so, but again, we're not going to know the implications of this for another 10 years, for another 15 years. It's exciting in a lot of ways. It's actually quite worrying in a lot of ways. I'm regulating how much. I keep using the word regulation. It's not regulating. I'm monitoring how much time my kids use the iPad or the phones or whatever. I think it's good for them in a lot of ways.
Worst case scenario then, 15 years down the line, we have a generation of kids people who potentially can't function.
I'm worried about the social ineptness of some of these kids. Like, are they not going to be able to hold kind of rational conversations between each other? At the same time, they may be more articulate because they have you know, a Wikipedia at their fingertips, so they know more than we do. I think we're going to see people that react positively to digital and are self-regulating, and then people who react negatively to digital because of the kind of the massive information that comes to them.
I don't think that people know more necessarily. I just think we have more information. But I don't know if we're more informed, or we have more connections, but I don't know if we communicate better. And sort of to take a step back and think about, technology is amazing. There's so many examples of how it can improve lives and make people connected, or stuff like 3D printing prosthetic limbs in South Sudan for $30. You know, like, it's amazing. But unless we take a step back and think, well, what are we using it for? Is it making us happier? Are we more informed? Do we have more knowledge? Are we acting on our information? Can we communicate with our family and friends and loved ones? I know it's all a bit high, like mushy stuff, but it's really important.
Jennifer, let's bring you in at this stage. Where do you stand on this? Do you feel like we are heading towards a generation of drones?
Yeah, my big concern right now has been around legitimizing hacking and ethical hacking and these cybersecurity skills. I ran an event last year at the Houses of Parliament, Tech versus Brains, about the eradication of white-collar jobs and where jobs were just completely obliterating, by the thousands. At the same time, we're creating new jobs, especially within cybersecurity. But if you look at how easy it is to hack, especially with programs, with like a pineapple and, nets, it's like hack by number. These kids can get into things very quickly. And one of my fascinations in learning my own cybersecurity skills is seeing that point that they go this way, right? Because in a matter of, before you know it, you're already into I shouldn't have seen that. I shouldn't have gone into this area. And it's not so much that there's like a warning sign, warning, illegal. What you're doing is crossing the boundaries of the law. Kids don't really recognize that difference. For example, National Crimes Agency is an amazing program where they've sent out these letters, this like outreach program to kids all over the country via letter. Now, they have parents that are like, not my little Johnny. They don't know what to do, and parents don't understand what, spy bots are or malware, and so to find this on a PC or a Mac, like, help my kid's a hacker. Now what do? You don't really know how to deal with that. And then teachers in schools. We are creating our own VPNs in schools for kids to now talk on a secure network internally. What happens if that gets hacked? And it's all too easily for these kids to then access the outside world and see things little minds should not be seeing. Mm-hmm. And I know the UK government is quite firm on that. Such leaders like Baroness Joanna Shields is really cracking down on internet security, and that's great. But I don't think we're giving enough to the ethics, like teaching right from wrong. I mentioned in the break that I believe that this, the way we surf the internet needs to be taught in schools. Yep. The way we legislate, kids behind wheels of a car, or they going, if they're going to be responsible enough to drive a vehicle in our streets, I need to know that you understand right from wrong. Now anybody can access a computer or make their own computer with a Raspberry Pi, and these are all great things, but it is very scary. We live in a world where we seem to be placated, where the governments get hacked, right? Especially the Americans. They're like hacked every 7 seconds. Okay, fine, fair enough. They deserve it, the Americans. And then it's, the corporates. Oh, well, they clearly weren't taking care of our data, corporate. But what happens all too soon is when complete identities get wiped off, like Sally from Swansea, or everyone in Tech London Advocates, they're part of this network that gets identities completely erased. Or whenever I tell people, I'm going to be able to hack you through your brakes of your car, or your microwave, or your stove, and everyone's like, no one's going to want to hack my stove. No, you're not. They're not. But they're going to want to they're going to use your stove to access everybody on EDF or British Gas, right, in that network. Or, just to give you an example, especially with everything, and I mean everything in the projected coming years, having a smart chip device in it. So the fear is not going to just be consumer goods, but, the overall industry of manufacturing, everything being connected. All these items, your handbag, your water bottle, your phone, your smartwatch, these create layers of vulnerabilities. And if we are not educating, the same as what we do when we balance a checkbook, we take care of our diet. These are other things you could argue that we need to also teach. But these are when kids are going through the curriculum of life in the schools, we have to make more of an emphasis on teaching this, because we don't know what the Generation X is going to grow up, being exposed to an iPad. They just think that's life.
I also think that adults have the same, I really think that we can create a lot of stuff now. We have the tools to really create stuff that we had only imagined 10 years ago. But I think the discussion should be about what we should create, not what we can create. There's no need for us to create all of the things that we could, and we need to start introducing to adults and to children the idea of what should we create now that we have all of these cool tools at our disposal.
The world's gone mad when my toaster is connected to the internet. We just don't need connected toasters.
Telling you whether it's brown bread or white bread. We're out of time again for this part. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll go through some of the thoughts that you've been sending in to us on Twitter, and you can still send your thoughts to us at London Live or email them hello@londonlive.co.uk. Back with us in about 4 minutes' time. See you then. Hello again, welcome back to the final part of today's London Live Debates with me, Anthony Bax. We've been asking how technology improves and makes our lives slightly more complicated today. Let's just take a look at some of the thoughts that you've been sending in to us. Here we go. So this is what you've been sending in to us on Twitter from Brad there. Only drawback would be attention spans of people in conversations. Sometimes they get consumed in their phones. I think we can all agree with that one. And James has said technology has given us a great quality of life. We need to maintain a balance, though. Many are being too focused on technology, especially mobile and social generations. Yeah, let's just talk about mobile phones. We haven't really touched a huge amount on smartphones, for example. Pete, do you think smartphones are a problem?
No. Well, I think they connect us to the world around us in ways that we were not connected previously. So that's not a negative, that's a real positive. On the point about Twitter, statistically 1 in 5 people check their tweets before they say good morning to their loved one in the morning. That's kind of scary, that they're more interested in the digital them than the real them. So but that's because you can just reach over and pick it up now. You don't have to go and boot your computer up to kind of check data and things that are going on in your world. I think mobile phones are an amazing piece of technology that we have to get in the hands of everybody to get them connected for health reasons, for education reasons, for efficiency reasons. We've spoke a lot today about children. Like, I'm really keen on the other end of that scale as well. You know, our parents, getting them connected via smartphones is way easier than teaching them how to use computers or hack or code. I just gave my mum my old iPhone, and suddenly she's got a connection to her family that live in different parts of the country via Facebook and things like that. This is incredible for their generation, to have these small and large screens that they can connect to everything. So I think the mobile phone is the reason that we've seen this change in the last 10 years, the reason we're more connected, the reason that we're more in touch with our colleagues and our work and each other. I think there's a great point on the tweet about the phone drone mentality of just staring at the phone. And I think that's down to parents to educate children, that's down to ourselves just to regulate our own behaviour and spend less time staring at the phone. But that's going to come. I think we're at that impasse now where it's going to blend seamlessly into the world around us rather than being a novelty.
Okay.
It's on its way. It's on its way.
Do you agree? Do you think we will get over that idea of constantly being attached to our phones? And there's this idea of, you know, if you lose your phone, you've lost your arm at the moment. Do you think we'll
I think we're going to develop whole psychologies around how to digital detox or disconnect from our phone. I think that we're going to start learning not to have it at the end of our hand the whole time. The bits that are useful might be somewhere else on us digitally. But yeah, I think that we're going to have to learn to disconnect from it, because I think that lots of problems are coming out of it, like addiction, cyberbullying. In China, they have internet addiction camps where children are sent to cure themselves of their internet addiction, and their state-mandated, government-run internet camps.
Good for them.
It was well, the conditions in them aren't great, but it highlights an issue. And the other thing about mobile technology and sort of the bubble that we live in is that more people have a mobile phone than have a toilet in the world, which I always think is really interesting when we're thinking about how important is it. Well, how important is all of this? You know, if you don't have a toilet or enough to eat, like, I just think we need to take a step back and thinking that mobile's the most important thing in the world.
But this is a slightly bizarre thing to say. What if a mobile phone could lead you to the closest toilet? And so that statistically you mentioned is a terrible, terrible thing.
That would be great, but I think you're imagining a place that I can't imagine, because if you had a mobile phone with the technology to lead you to the toilet, like, where are you in the world and what's happened with the development of that? Yeah. I think it's great, and actually mobile technology allows a lot of the world to access the internet who can't access it through wired technology or broadband, so it is brilliant. And it can help with medical issues, particularly people in remote areas who can be monitored off-site or given advice off-site for health issues. It's brilliant. But I do think, back to your original point, we are too dependent on them, and we're going to develop ways to sort of cut ourselves off a bit.
Okay. Just coming back to London, in terms of the tech sector in London developing and moving forward, Jennifer, what needs to happen now to encourage another 4 years of boom? And to make sure that we are continuing to develop there?
Great question. A wonderful woman called Sherry Kutu has written a report called the Scale Up Report. And this is where I think the biggest focus we should be as a ever-evolving ecosystem. We need more Series B players. We need to give more...
What's a Series B player?
So we've got an amazing tax structure and investment structure for what we call seed in London, so 150K around. You don't, as a startup, you don't really need more than 150,000 to start up and get going. And the government has done a great job of giving us tax breaks for angels, you know, who would never otherwise invest in a tech company to invest. Now, where we are falling short is, you know, we've got amazing initiatives, Marcus Studdard led with the London Stock Exchange with AIM. The problem is we have not evolved enough with the buyer's market. So we list companies on London Stock Exchange, but no one's really buying tech yet. It's still brand new. So what we have to do are scale our companies, get them up and growing and, you know, bigger. I've faced tremendous challenges. Part of that is because I am a foreigner and I've had to get visas and all this kind of stuff, which has kept me, you know, back. But, you know, building a business up is one of the hardest things possible. And I can say that, you know, with New York did really well because, you know, Google brought a bunch of Valley people over and then they ended up shutting down the office. So you had amazing R&D and product development people at Expo, you know, just up for the taking in New York, which helped get money raised and companies to pop and evaluations and, you know, things to be listed in New York. We haven't really seen that yet in London. Initiatives around not just tech companies, but all companies, particularly STEM skills, so science, technology, engineering, and maths in this city, taking an idea from this inception up to a Series A, you know, 1 or 2 million into 3-4 Series B, you know, space. So this is where we have to focus. We need more later stage investment funds around how to scale these companies bigger. Okay,
and Sherry, who you mentioned there, is our guest on the headline interview tomorrow here on London Live
awesome.
At 10:30. We're almost out of time, but let's get some kind of concluding thoughts from both of you. So, Sophie, a decade's time, what would you like to see the London tech sector achieving? What would be its biggest thing that it could achieve? Tough question.
I'd like to see us all being more conscious people, more mindful, understanding the tech around us, building things that we think are positive and useful for the world that we live in, communicating with each other to lift the veil on all of the things that we're told all the time and explore them for ourselves. So to be more mindful people, use technology to make us mindful, informed.
And Pete, where would you like to see us go?
I'd certainly like to see the momentum that we've seen in the last 10 years continue and grow exponentially, and I think it's going to as well because there's generations coming through that are just going to keep pushing it forward. I want to see us thinking about design and design of technology and design of services in a more considered way. So squirting things out into the market is fantastic. We have the opportunity and the tools to do that, but you know, don't do things better, do better things is the kind of the message that we want to try and bring to the technology industry. The collaboration between all of the big and small companies in London just needs to get bigger, better, tighter, and I think once we've got this cracked, this is the city to watch for technology. This is an amazing opportunity.
Do you think that more focused approach will happen? Do you think we're getting there to that stage?
For sure.
I think we are, yeah.
We're not letting it go.
And it's those people that are starting these companies in kind of Silicon Roundabout and things that are creating tighter communication. Like they're creating communication tools. That's what they're doing. So I think it's definitely coming and we're definitely leading.
It seems like London certainly is leading the way when it comes to the innovation side of technology anyway and the future. We are almost out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. So our guests today, they have been Pete Traynor, the founder of Nexus. We've had Sophie Deen, the founder of the edutech firm Bright Little Labs, and Jennifer Arcuri as well, the founder of InnoTech Summit. Just very quickly, anything coming up on the week that you're doing, Tech Week, anything exciting people should look out for?
Tug Expo down in Old Street Roundabout. There's an amazing expo of talks all week in the tube station. There's some great speakers. I'd go and see some of that.
Okay.
Come join the cybersecurity group with Tech London Advocates.
There we go. That's all we have time for. We'll be back at 12 with the latest headlines. Up next is London's Burning. Thank you.
Table.
Yeah.